Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Behind the Bulletin. Today, we bring you a deeply troubling and emotional story that has shaken fans of one of Korea's most beloved couples. Panic at home. Hyun Bin and son Ye-jin's young son has fallen seriously ill. A sudden health crisis that has left the entire household in shock and the couple extremely worried. What happened behind closed doors? How is their little boy doing now? And why has this incident caused such widespread concern? Stay with us as we uncover every heartbreaking detail, right now. The night it happened was supposed to be quiet, the kind of peaceful Hyun Bin and son Ye-jin cherished after long days of schedules, events, and endless work. The lights in the hallway were dim, the house calm. Son already asleep after giggling his way through bedtime stories. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Until the silence broke. A weak, choked cry echoed from the baby room, not the usual soft whimper of a child waking up, but a trembling, distressed sound that made Ye-jin's heart drop instantly. Rushed toward the room. Her footsteps fast. Breath quickening. When she pushed the door open, the sight before her froze the world. He was burning with fever. Her little boy lay curled on the bed. Cheeks flushed a painful red. Breaths shallow and uneven. His tiny fingers gripped the blanket tightly as if fighting something only he could feel. Ye-jin's knees nearly buckled as she hurried to lift him into her arms. His skin was scorching hot, far too hot for comfort. Far too hot for any parent to remain calm. Bin. Something's wrong. Her voice cracked into the hallway. Trembling with panic. Hyun Bin appeared almost instantly. Eyes widening the moment he touched their son's burning forehead. The shift in his expression, from confusion to terror, happened in less than a second. Without saying a word, he grabbed a thermometer, his hands shaking as he pressed it to their son's skin. Seconds felt like hours. When the thermometer beeped, their hearts stopped. The number on the screen was far beyond normal, far beyond safe. For a split second, the world went silent. Then everything collapsed into chaos. Ye-jin clutched their son close, rocking him gently as tears formed in her eyes. Ben rushed back and forth through the drawers, grabbing cold compresses, fever patches, anything he could find, but his frantic movements betrayed his fear. The normally calm, collected man who rarely lost composure was now trembling uncontrollably. Their son whimpered weakly, his eyes half closed, his breaths growing rapid and shallow. Ye-jin pressed him against her chest, whispering softly, "Please, baby, stay with mommy, please." But his small body shivered, and the panic in her eyes deepened. Hyun Bin dialed emergency services with trembling fingers. His cracked as he explained the symptoms. The operator told them to keep their son awake, keep him cool, and prepare for immediate transport. Seconds later, the boy suddenly went limp in Ye-jin's arms. "No, no, no, no," she cried, shaking him gently. "Baby, wake up. Please." Her voice shattered into pieces. Hyun Bin froze, his breath caught in his throat, horror flooding his eyes. He knelt beside her, his hands cupping their son's face, whispering desperately, "Come on, son, stay with us." The minutes until paramedics arrived were the longest of their lives. When the ambulance doors finally slammed shut behind them, Ye-jin held her son tightly as paramedics placed an oxygen mask over his tiny face. Hyun Bin sat beside them, gripping Ye-jin's hand so tightly his knuckles turned white. Never left their son, wide, terrified, glistening with tears he couldn't hold back. The siren screamed through the night. But inside the ambulance, it was the silent fear in their eyes that screamed the loudest. And just when they thought the situation couldn't get worse, the paramedic turned to them with a grave expression. "Not responding to standard cooling. We need to prepare for immediate intervention." The sentence hit them like a hammer. Ye-jin gasped, pressing her forehead to her son's. Hyun Bin's jaw clenched, tears pushing to the surface. The ambulance raced forward. Time raced faster. And their son's condition raced downward. The hospital was a blur of bright lights, urgent footsteps, and medical voices overlapping in controlled chaos. The moment the ambulance arrived, the doors burst open, and doctors rushed their son onto a stretcher. Ye-jin tried to follow, but a nurse gently held her back. "Please wait here, we need to stabilize him." "No. He needs me, I need to be with him," she cried, her voice breaking. Hyun Bin wrapped his arms around her from behind, holding her tightly as he whispered, "They'll take care of him. We have to let them do their job." His voice trembled, betraying how close he was to falling apart. They stood in the hallway, helpless, listening to the chaos behind the emergency room doors. The shout from the doctors felt like a knife to their hearts. Every beep of a monitor sent chills down their spines. Her son's small silhouette disappeared behind the curtains, swallowed by the frightening machinery surrounding him. Minutes passed. Then tens of minutes. Then nearly an hour. Every second was torture. Finally, the doors opened, and a doctor stepped out, removing his mask with a grave expression. Hyun rushed to him, gripping his sleeve with trembling hands. "How is he? Please, tell me he's okay." The doctor's silence told them everything. "He's in critical condition," he said carefully. "They're doing everything possible. But his fever spiked faster than expected. It may be an infection. We need more tests." Ye-jin's legs gave out. She collapsed against Hyun, who caught her immediately. His face crumpled, his voice shaking as he asked, "Is he in danger?" The doctor hesitated. "We're trying to prevent complications. But right now, we can't make guarantees." The words shattered them. Ye-jin sobbed into Hyun's chest, her hands clutching his shirt desperately. He held her tightly, tears finally escaping his eyes as he whispered, "Our son is strong, he'll fight, he has to fight." Even he didn't believe his own words. Hours passed with no updates. Hyun paced the hallway, hands in his hair, his face pale with exhaustion and fear. Every footstep echoed like a clock counting down. Ye-jin sat in a chair, her head buried in her hands, shoulders trembling uncontrollably. Neither spoke. Neither slept. Neither looked away from the emergency room doors. They would open with good news. Then suddenly, alarms rang inside the room. Doctors' voices grew louder, more frantic. Footsteps pounded. Machines beeped violently. Hyun's heart stopped. Screamed, "Let us in. Please, let us in." Nurses held them back as medical staff rushed around their son. People watched helplessly through the small window, watched as doctors fought to stabilize him, watched as nurses inserted new IVs, watched as their baby's small body struggled on the hospital bed. It was the worst moment of their lives. After what felt like an eternity, the alarms quieted. Doctors slowed. Nurses exhaled. One of the staff stepped toward the door with a look of cautious relief. Hyun nearly collapsed and covered her mouth, sobbing with both fear and relief. The doctor approached them again. "He's responding, but he's not out of danger yet. We'll need to monitor him closely." Ye-jin nodded through tears, whispering, Thank you." Hyun bowed his head, his voice hoarse. "Please save him. I'll do anything. Just save our son." The doctor placed a gentle hand on their shoulders. "We'll do everything we can." They finally entered the room to see their son again, pale, fragile, hooked to wires. Ye-jin leaned over him and whispered with a trembling voice full of love and desperation, "Mommy's here. Daddy's here, please stay with us." Hyun brushed their son's tiny hand with his thumb. Falling silently. In that dim hospital room, with the machines softly beeping and the night stretching endlessly outside, the couple held on to hope, the only thing stronger than fear. And as the hours crawled toward dawn, one truth became painfully clear. Son's fight had only just begun. Dawn slowly crept through the hospital windows. But for Hyun and son Ye-jin, no longer moved in hours, it moved in heartbeats. The rise and fall of their son's fragile chest felt like a silent battle between hope and fear. The machines continued their steady beeping. Each sound seemed too soft, too uncertain, as if even the machines were afraid to disturb the stillness of the room. Ye-jin hadn't moved from the bedside all night. Her hair was messy, her eyes swollen, her voice hoarse from crying. But she never let go of her son's tiny hand. Hyun stood by the window, staring at the faint sunrise with a helplessness that broke him more deeply than any role, any injury, heartbreak he had ever known. He looked older, exhausted, and devastated. Every few minutes, he turned back to check if his son's chest was still rising. The slightest movement made Ye-jin gasp. Suddenly, their son stirred, just a small twitch, barely noticeable, but enough to send both parents rushing to his side. Lids fluttered weakly. His lips quivered as if trying to form words he couldn't speak. Jin covered her mouth with trembling hands. "Baby, can you hear Mommy?" she whispered, her voice trembling with desperate hope. His tiny fingers curled slightly around hers. Burst into tears instantly, leaning over him, his forehead again and again. Hyun Bin's breath hitched, and he pressed his hand firmly over his eyes to stop the tears that finally broke free. Then it happened, the moment that shattered them and healed them at the same time. A single tear rolled down their son's cheek. From pain. Not from fear. But because he recognized their voices. Hyun Bin dropped to his knees, taking his son's other hand in both of his own. His voice cracked open completely. "Daddy's here, you scared us so much, but you're strong. Okay? You're stronger than any fever. Just keep fighting." Another small movement. Another weak squeeze. It was enough to give them life again. But before relief could fully settle, the monitor beeped erratically. Ye-jin froze. Breath caught in her throat as nurses rushed into the room. Doctor followed quickly, checking the readings, adjusting the IV, assessing their son's condition with clinical precision that terrified the couple. "What's happening?" Hyun Bin asked, voice trembling uncontrollably. The doctor didn't answer immediately. That silence suffocated them. Finally, he looked up with measured calm. "Fever is dropping, that's good. But his body is still very weak. We need to keep him monitored closely. The next few hours are critical." Critical. Word stabbed them again. Ye-jin's legs nearly gave out. Hyun Bin wrapped an arm around her waist before she collapsed. She leaned into him, tears streaming down her cheeks as she whispered, "I don't care how long it takes. I just want him safe. I just want him to live." Hyun Bin pressed his forehead against hers, both of them shaking, clinging to each other like drowning souls holding on to the same last breath. Their son's breathing steadied slightly. Hours, they stayed like that, both holding their child's hands, both whispering stories. Lies, promises. As if their voices alone could pull him back from the edge. Maybe they did. Because slowly, painfully, the color returned to their son's cheeks. His breathing deepened. His body relaxed. And when he finally opened his eyes fully, at his parents with pure, innocent confusion, Hyun Bin broke. He cried openly, not controlled tears, not quiet ones, but real, body shaking, emptying sobs. Ye-jin covered her mouth, falling to her knees beside the bed, crying as if every emotion she had bottled up had exploded at once. Their son blinked weakly, his tiny voice barely audible. "Mommy." Ye-jin collapsed into tears. Hyun Bin covered his face with both hands. It was the sound they prayed for. The sound they needed. The sound that brought them back to life. Nurses watched quietly from the doorway, moved by the raw, fragile beauty of the moment. The doctor allowed himself a small, relieved smile before stepping away to give the family privacy. Small, dimly lit room, surrounded by wires and monitors and shadows of fear that had not yet fully faded. Hyun Bin and son Ye-jin held their son and whispered thank yous to the universe. He wasn't out of danger. He still needed care. Little body still trembled with weakness. But he was awake. Was fighting. He was alive. And for them, that was everything. Outside, the hospital corridors hummed softly. Inside, a family clung tightly together. Taken, exhausted, and forever changed. The first night of their lives had ended. The long road to recovery had begun. And so, as morning light finally warmed the cold hospital room, the nightmare that had gripped Hyun Bin and son Ye-jin slowly began to loosen its hold. Their son's fragile breaths grew steadier. Tiny fingers curled softly around theirs. And for the first time in hours, hope returned to their hearts. The fear, the sleepless night, the desperate prayers, all of it melted into quiet relief as they watched their little boy open his eyes and recognize the two people who loved him more than anything in this world. Their family wasn't completely out of danger yet. The worst had passed. What remained was gratitude, overwhelming, humbling gratitude, for the strength of their son, dedication of the medical team, and for the love that held them together when everything seemed on the verge of collapse. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey here at Behind the Bulletin. Your compassion, your attention, and your heartfelt support are what inspire us to continue bringing you the most powerful, moving, and unforgettable stories from the world of Korean entertainment. Stay with us, because every story has another chapter, and we'll be here to bring you the truth behind the headlines.